Story 1. I did it for a while. A few months in, we had an afternoon date in the park, and she showed up with a 4-year-old. She put the kid on the playground equipment and walked over to where I was sitting and said, "You can't kiss me or touch me. I don't want him telling my husband." I just got up and left. No regrets, just pity for the kid. Story 2. Happened to me when I was 21. I had 0% knowledge of her being married. We were literally in the middle of going at it on my couch when there was a very angry pounding on my door. There was no ignoring it, and she seemed as completely perplexed as I was. I opened the door, and a man simply said, "Is my wife with you?" A quick look at her confirmed it was indeed her husband. I felt horrible and stammered over my words, trying to explain that I had no clue. I don't remember everything he said, but the gist was he knew I didn't know and thanked me for my honesty, as he had been trying to catch her for a while. Then he simply left. I don't know if regret was the right word, as I did not know it was happening, but I was pretty upset with her and basically told her, "I don't know if you can go home tonight, but you need to get out." Story 3. Yes, she and I were going steady for about 10 months in a relationship, and I even introduced her to my daughter. One day, I went to the gym and she just happened to be there. I saw her with this guy and immediately thought to myself, "What on earth?" She came up to me and introduced me to her husband. I could tell by the look in his eyes he didn't know a thing. So I did what I thought was best. I let him know the whole story of how she and I met and the dates. Eventually, he was able to piece everything together. He was beyond mad, but not at me. As for those two, he divorced her, and I refused to talk to her. Her ex-husband and I became good friends, and we go to bars every once in a while. Story for me in here because my instructive thoughts have me reading the comments trying to find the guy my wife had an affair with. I'm just glad my kid is my clone. Story 5. The first time I had no idea. I was walking my dog in my apartment complex one night, falling over drunk, and she called out to me from her balcony. I was too drunk to hold a real conversation, so I left. I saw her the next day, and she invited me up. I wound up sleeping with her several times before I found out she was married. The only regret I have is that her husband was a good guy. I started dating a girl shortly after, and we would all hang out. Neither of us ever said anything, but she would openly flirt with me when we were all together. The second one I met on a dating app. We went out for coffee and hit it off. We went back to her house, and it was obvious she had a family. She told me the story about being in an open marriage because her husband had problems in the bedroom. Not sure if it was true, but she was amazing in bed. We slept together twice, and she told me she needed to stop and focus on her family. A little while later, she sent me a text saying she was pregnant and it was mine. I told her we could get a DNA test done because I had a vasectomy a few years prior. I never heard from her again. I only regret that one because I think she was trying to set me up. Story 6. Yes. I was also married at the time, and we were both unhappy with our spouses, but too cowardly to go through with divorces. Her husband was a raging alcoholic, and my wife and I hadn't had sex in at least a year, if not more, as everything seemed to just fizzle out. The married woman and I both worked together and thus saw each other frequently. The two of us fell in love hard. She embodied everything I wanted in a partner, both physically and mentally. The compatibility, sex, and endless conversations were something I had never experienced before at that level. We held our affair for 2 to 3 years with several attempts in between trying to stop so we could alleviate the guilt and shame and fix our marriages. All the sneaking around eventually caused me to hit bottom with anxiety and depression, and I finally ended my marriage. I never told my wife the details as I didn't want to cause her any more harm, but I was ready to confess if she asked. After my divorce, I decided to take some space and better myself with years of therapy and try to be a better human being. Although we remained in touch here and there, I eventually started dating others while she stayed married. A couple of years later, she finally divorced him after his drinking landed him in the hospital from a vehicle accident. I decided to try and reconnect with her romantically, but then she started doing her own self-help thing. Thus, the timing didn't pan out. Eventually, he sobered up, and she remarried him and now has 2 beautiful kids and seems very happy. We still keep in contact for business reasons, but nothing more. This all went down about 10 years ago. I'm 45 and still single, and I still think about her nearly every day. I guess I can't regret anything because everything is perfect and as it should be with both of them. My ex-wife eventually found the love of her life and is now remarried with children. Despite being successful, likable, and, according to others, attractive, I'm unable to sustain a relationship and find my person to settle down with. And I really want to. Being alone at this age isn't easy when everyone around me seems to have figured it out. I used to wonder if this was karma punishing me, but I suspect my issues in the relationship department are what got me into that mess in the first place. Story 7. I hooked up with a married man and his wife found out. Story time. So, I was regularly hooking up with a married guy for well over a year. His wife apparently suspected that he was having an affair, so she followed him to my apartment one night. After he left, she came to the door fuming, demanding to see the person who was involved with her husband. She was surprised when it was only me there. She went from angry to confused to deflated. She had that whole, "Oh my God, my husband is gay" moment. But after she calmed down, we talked. I first explained he likely wasn't gay, maybe bisexual, but not gay. One of the things he really enjoyed about his visits to my place, which he expressed repeatedly to me, was not necessarily the sex but how I made him feel attractive. He didn't feel handsome or sexy at home and was depressed because he was required to give so much, try so hard, and received nothing in return. She never initiated sex, never told him he was handsome, and never tried in bed. She never held him, touched him, or made him feel special. No small gifts or gestures of appreciation, didn't ask about his day, etc. But I did, and that was why he came over so often for so long. We didn't even hook up every time he was over. We sometimes hung out because I made him feel good about himself. Well, that apparently was a wake-up call for her because, from what he told me, she suddenly started being a lot more affectionate and made more of an effort. Eventually, he stopped coming over. Sucked for me, but great for them. I don't know if she ever told him we had that talk, but I ran into him years ago, and apparently his marriage was great. He was happy, and they had a couple of kids. I was happy for him, but like I said, it sucked for me because I was honestly really into him too. Story 8. She was an attractive wife. Her husband had no sexual desire, and I was recently divorced. She told me to do whatever I wanted with her. It was a fantastic few weeks. No, I don't regret it. Story 9. I had a one-night stand with a Muslim Moroccan woman about 6 years ago, then saw on Facebook that she was married a month after. I didn't even know she was engaged. It turned out she was arranged to be married, and I was some sort of last hurrah. I had mixed feelings because she was an absolute free spirit, but she was marrying a man much older than both of us and apparently very conservative, so I'm glad she had fun, I guess. I heard they divorced about a year later. I would never have done it had I known she was engaged, but I guess in her mind, she wasn't since it was being forced by her family. Story 10. Nah, I've been hooking up with her since 2013, and she married her husband in 2018. Her 2 kids are mine. I'm also married. Actually, now that I think of it, she's my wife. Story 11. Met a hot woman. Very chatty type. Extrovert. I'd call her a slight airhead. Discussed a business idea. Her husband actually told her to meet with me about it over dinner. After the meeting, I told her that I couldn't work with her. Too much attraction. She kissed me at meeting 2. Said I could be her dirty little secret. I was thinking, who says that? Meeting 3. She unbuckled my belt before going to dinner while sitting in my car. Went downtown. I suspected this wasn't her first affair. Way too cool about the situation. After many more encounters, she divorced. Said her husband was cheap and a tightwad. She wasn't happy with him when she met me. Lesson for people. Most won't cheat, but watch for signs. Story 12. No, it was a long story, but I'll shorten it. This girl was a very close friend in college. She was dating the man she would eventually marry, and I didn't respect him at all. To the point that one night he was drunkenly screaming at her and her little sister, and she was afraid he would hurt them, so I threatened to put him in the hospital. Anyways, one night we drunkenly hooked up, and it kept happening until she moved away to finish her degree, and it fizzled out. She ended up marrying him, and it only got worse from that point. She lived out of state at this point with her husband, and I ended up going to visit a few times. Eventually, he found out, and it was the last straw for their marriage. Post-divorce, she ended up meeting a really nice guy and seems to be in a much better place. Ended up being friends with benefits with her for something like 7 years off and on, until she finally got divorced and met this new guy. They seem extremely happy together, and she's much better off. Haven't seen her in a few years now, but honestly, it feels like it all worked out for the best. Story 13. Never married, but with a couple of girls, we've had a boyfriend catch us. The first time I knew so I wouldn't have sex with her, but we were cuddling and watching TV. He thought he caught us in the act and smashed the taillights on my car. I had sex with her the next day because why not at that point? The second one I didn't know about. I woke up first and was walking around in my underwear when somebody knocked. I answered, and it was the boyfriend she'd allegedly broken up with for choking her. I introduced myself, shook his hand, apologized and said, "Well, I should probably be on my way." He texted me shortly after, wanting to fight after he got my number from her phone. Then I reminded him that their relationship started as an affair behind his best friend's back. He realized how foolish he was and apologized. I don't regret anything. Both guys were and still are terrible people. Story 14. Only a handful of times with the same woman. She and her husband had been separated for about 3 years, and he refused to sign the divorce paperwork. He lived hours away and everything. I didn't feel bad about it because he was actually a bad person. Even his kids didn't like him. Story 15. Eventually, as it's a horrible thing to do. Yes, they pursued me, threw themselves at me, but I didn't have to take them up on it. One actually got me drunk and took advantage, but I still shouldn't have been hanging out with married women alone. Ever. One only revealed to me that she was married afterward, so I don't feel as bad. But the other two, I knew full well they were married, and I was young and angry at the world, selfish, just wanted to fulfill my desires. They were going to cheat with someone. It didn't have to be me. I put that burden on my soul and have paid for it several times over. Story 16. I knew her because I was dating her friend. We were in a club, and she said the whole night that she wanted to go after partying. The girl I was dating refused because she had work in the morning. We went to an after-party club alone. We were in line to get in, and suddenly she got all nervous and was like, "Let's leave." I was like, "No way, we are halfway through the line." Once we were in, we started dancing and almost instantly making out. She saw a friend, went to say hi, and as soon as she came back, she said we had to leave immediately. I asked what was going on, and she said, "Okay, here's the deal. I'm married and have a kid." I had no idea. She said the guy she said hi to was a friend and that he knew she was married. We left and went to my car. On the walk there, she explained she was in the process of divorcing but still lived with him. We continued making out in my car. I offered to go to a motel, and she refused because she felt bad about it, but we didn't stop making out. After a while, she was like, "Let's have sex right here." I told her we should go to a motel because I'm not really into car sex, but she was like, "If it happens right here, right now." The sex was amazing, the best car sex I've ever had. After it, I drove her home, and she was like, "My friend can't know anything about it," and I agreed. I mean, I was dating her. We started talking, and she went to a birthday party of mine because we love dancing reggaeton with each other, and the last time I saw her, we did go to a motel where we had some of the best sex of my life. The part one regret is that she went to a plan before the divorce beach trip with her husband and apparently rekindled their relationship and love for each other. She then blocked me from every social media, and I never heard from her again. It's not like I thought we were going to be in a relationship, but I wish we spent more time as friends with benefits. Bonus fact, a conversation with the girl I was dating confirmed that as far as she knew, the girl was actually sure about the divorce and that she didn't just say that as typical nonsense married people say. So I guess that's just the power of Playa del Carmen. Story 17. I did match with someone on Bumble who was married. I was in my mid-20s, and she was about 10 years older than me. When we matched, she messaged me for a bit and ghosted me shortly after. I did a follow-up hey a few days later, and we talked some more, but she hesitated to give me her number when I asked for it. When she did, she called me and told me that she was married. She was separated from her husband for 6 months and could not afford a lawyer to get a divorce just yet. But she wanted to meet me because she somehow felt really comfortable talking to me. I guess it's because I didn't seem fazed by the fact that she was married at the time, although honestly, it was because I had no idea what to think. I never had a married woman want to go out on a date with me before. Curiosity got the better of me, and we had a coffee date together. She was very sweet, but she cried so much whenever she talked about her husband. She insisted up and down that she was over him and that their marriage was over. I took her out for a walk outside the coffee shop, and she talked about random things until we were ready to go. I walked her to her car, and she gave me a kiss goodbye and wanted to meet again. But all I remember thinking is, what in the world have I gotten myself into? She moved so fast that I felt overwhelmed during the next few weeks of knowing her. She would talk about a timeline of us getting married once her divorce was finalized. And she made it clear that she wanted to have kids as soon as possible. And she pushed me to look into buying a house together, too. I remember her telling me things like, I know you're inexperienced, but you'll get the hang of it. And I shouldn't have to hold your hand. You should just get it. It was an experience. But after those few weeks, I broke things off and went no contact. I felt bad for her, though, and I hope she's in a better place in life.